How does one begin to describe the processes that govern magic? Surely defining and categorizing something that, by its own definition, defies logic is a pointless task, and to some degree you are right. Magic cannot be formulated and dotted down to a science, despite what some would say. However, magic can, in a way, be understood, at least in concept, and quite often those who truly grasp it cannot put it into words. You see, magic, in its purest form, is actually simpler than one would think. Magic is the art of change. With will and thought alone, you alter the world around you. Through dedication and domination, you bend the will of the fabric of the universe itself and puppet the strings of reality. Magic is not witches on broomsticks or demons conjuring in the night. It can be, but it is not limited to that. Magic is the force of possibility. Tonight, my ward, I wish to discuss the mages, those mortal men who have the very power to manipulate the world around them. But before I start, I have to spend some time to talk about magic in a broader concept. See, we kindred are magical beings inherently. Some of us can even perform types of magical spells and rituals in order to bend reality in a specific and focused way. But to the eyes of a mage, that is not magic. At least not true magic. For you see, they do something different. They are not casting spells or incantations. They are not evoking some forbidden art studied in some ancient long-forgotten tomb, but simply editing the world around them. They are not like the Tremere or Hecata, performing specific acts, or wizards enchanting in old towers, at least most of them aren't. But simply, they are people who have figured out to some degree how the world truly works. I should also note, before I get into the topic in greater detail, that magic as we kindred do it, as you previously thought it worked, does still exist. Non-mages are actually capable of casting spells and the like, and are just as limited as that sounds. But to the mages, those are known as sorceries. I believe, anyway. I will have to save those for another night, as it is a different topic. But what the mages do is look into the very fabric of the world itself, to see the universe with every aspect of itself laid bare to them, and pull at it. They, with full understanding of how it all functions, can now edit reality. Mages, like all of us creatures that go bump in the night, call themselves by a different name, one that I think is quite telling of their mindset. For they are the awakened, and the kind to them are the sleepers, beings who are just blind to the world around them. What it takes for one to truly awaken is a bit of a mystery, but it almost always involves some tragic event or a moment of doubt and loathing. When someone is at their truly darkest, when they genuinely feel that they would give or do anything to change this, that is often when it happens. Suddenly, the world becomes all too clear. Everything just starts to make sense. It's so clear now that their life, as it were, before this point, seems like a foolish joke. And so they pull themselves out of that situation, often in ways they don't expect or even understand themselves, at least not yet. You see, in that moment they awake, and probably for up to an hour or two afterwards, they are one of the most powerful states they will ever be, and potentially one of the most powerful beings on the planet, for they are able to change almost anything about our reality, and none of us could be the wiser on what they actually did. And if this could be controlled or intentionally created, who knows what you could accomplish. But alas, as you should know by now, magic does not work like that, or at least, not for us anyway. One thing I do want to note is how this is never truly the same for each of them, and I don't just mean the event, but their understanding of the world. Humans are simple beings at the end of the night, and so our minds cannot truly grasp the nature of the universe in its barest form. But we can simplify it. We could condense it in a way that still keeps its meaning intact, but allows us to know it greater, See, each mage actually describes how they see the world a little differently. I've heard one say that the world appears to them as a computer code, and they were just given admin access all of a sudden, whatever that means. Or one who views fabric of reality as the literal fabric of cloth, and they have just been given a sewing machine. It leads me to think that merely understanding the universe is but one step in the grand requirements in making of a mage. For you see, only mortal men can awaken. No kindred or lupine or anything else for that matter can do so, and the reasons why are baffling and infuriating. To be fair, no one actually knows why. It's clearly not a matter of understanding and intelligence, because we kindred are by far smart enough to do so, and if it were a matter of one's living soul, then the lupine should clearly be able to, for their souls are, shall I say, stronger, so to speak. No, I believe the final criteria for a mage to exist is that of their guiding force and guardian angel, an entity they call an avatar. Imagine for a moment that the beast inside of you, urging you to give in to your nature, is not only a lot more powerful, but had goals a lot more complicated, and in many, but not all ways, was actually trying to help you. That is an oversimplification of what an avatar is. But to answer just how powerful they are, they would be akin to a god trapped within a box, and from their perspective, all they could do is talk to one mouse to let them out. That mouse being the mage, of course. Again, I'm oversimplifying here, but it is this avatar that, in a way, grants them this power and guides them on their path. See, mages have a goal in mind, their final form, so to speak, as they wish to achieve apotheosis and ascend. This is something that few mages have ever achieved too, but those that do so are never seen or heard from again. The avatar solely wants to have the mage they have chosen or are connected to ascend. It's actually not really clear which one is true. And in this path, they will push the mage to do not only grand things, but also ones dark and foul, which is why I compare it to the beast we kindred have. The avatar can of course only communicate with their mage, and rarely does so if ever. And like their understanding of the universe, all avatars appear different physically, and their exact wants and goals can vary. I have heard of ones that appear as a being made of a void of stars with 6 arms and 7 heads, to one being a ring of floating around a ball of light, to one being a collection of hands that crawl up from the earth whenever they wish to speak. Truly cosmic entities beyond our understanding, with one goal in mind: ascension. But they may fail, and the mage might die before they achieve this. But mages believe that when this happens, they will reincarnate and awaken again in their next life, with no memory of their past one, but they will have the same avatar who will remember everything, but almost exclusively share nothing. On this, however, I have to call bullshit. It is far more likely that they are not the same mage reincarnated, but simply the avatar finding a new puppet or plaything to use. But that is what they believe, so I feel I should share it. But I hear you thinking, remember I can read your mind, if mages are so powerful, what's stopping them from just changing things all the time? From looking at all their problems and just turning them into dust? Well, technically speaking, the mortal kind are. You see, all people have a power, even if they don't know it. What they believe, in some way, solidifies the world and what is indeed possible. If most people alive think that magic is real and dragons fly across the sky, then they can be seen doing so. If the earth revolves around the sun, then so it does. If the earth is round, then round it shall be. They themselves do not need to know how any of this works. There are wise men, scientists that have figured out this sort of thing, so they don't need to think about it. They accept the reality before. This rule, the set of ideas that change the very nature of how the world works, is called the consensus. And yet, magic is real. Despite what people think, vampires, werewolves, and mages exist. So how can that be? Well, as a different mage has explained to me, imagine this hypothetical, that the universe is a computer, and that we are all glitches within it. We aren't reporting back to the computer anymore, we've stopped giving it our code, yet the humans still do. Us kindred and the lupines are small, we won't really be noticed in the system. But a mage, a reality-warping being who could destroy a skyscraper and open a portal to hell with just one click of their fingers, would be noticed. With every single sleeper that sees an awakened, they risk the information spreading out into more and more minds, changing what they believe to be real and true, creating an aspect of the consensus that holds a contradiction, and, in computer terms, an inconsistence that it will try to correct itself. When this happens, it is known as paradox, and it can cause disastrous calamity to a mage, perhaps even just erasing them from existence altogether. So they hide from the sleepers. They hold themselves back, don't push too far as to not break the consensus. They will not open a portal to hell to destroy a building, but instead make a gas leak cause an explosion, ignoring the fact that no such materials that would make that possible were actually present. It is, however, much more believable. You can't explain to a normal man how a small sun appeared and wiped out a city from the map, but you can a nuclear device, despite the fact that that man has no idea how one actually works. But they do believe that they exist. And so, that is how most mages have to operate, at least within the presence of the sleepers, lest they be squashed by the paradox they created. But they are, of course, completely aware of how this works, otherwise I wouldn't be able to talk to you about it now, would I? And so, they constantly battle and manipulate the world in order to change the consensus. Indeed, when mages come into conflict with anything, it is almost entirely over their control of things. Even other groups of mages who normally get along and agree about almost everything will go to war just to decide how the rules of our world should work. And one faction of them is indeed winning, but more of them in a bit later. For now, I wish to speak about what they are doing with the rest of their time when not dealing with other people, for they are often traversing everything. They move into the spirit world, or Umbra, which mages can access various layers of that others cannot. They can travel through hell, and wherever else souls can go. They even traverse through space, as if it were another one of those planes of existence. Some speak of a digital world wide web, where all technology is a part of, that they can somehow traverse through. These are other worlds, or alternate dimensions, or separate universes, or afterlives, or realms made by powerful creatures like the Fae. It's all so ridiculous. And yet, I know it all to be true, because mages have shown it to me. They enter more spiritually than physically, astral projecting in some way, at least for most of them. I know of one mage who speaks of space as if it is something you can just walk across. He built himself a castle on, of all places, Jupiter, the gas giant. I asked him how such a thing was possible, and he laughed at me for almost 3 minutes, and then told me that he was a wizard. Of course he can do what he pleases. I almost laughed back at him, but, well, he's not exactly wrong. He can do that. To get into all of these realms would be a waste of time in all earnest. We are not mages, and so this exercise would be pointless, for even they tire from the thought of them alone and truly understanding the spirit worlds. If you truly care to find out more yourself, go find one and ask them. Just know that they can learn a lot about our world just from glancing at them in a moment, and that their perceptions will be a little different, as all things with mages are. And lastly, it is understood that this is a vital step in their ascension. Most of the time anyway, mages are quite the exception with things. I should now move on to what they are actually capable of to some degree, what they can actually do with their powers. For while the potential of a mage is limitless, it does take time and effort for them to unlock their full potential. The using of a concept they don't yet fully understand can result in a terrible disaster for them and those around them. To help them understand their own powers better, they have categorized them into these different forces that they know as spheres. However, these, like with many things involving the mages, are actually susceptible to change due to understanding and belief, so different groups of mages might understand the spheres somewhat differently. I'll go into this more when I speak of the factions in greater detail. For now, let me simply list the spheres in no particular order. They are correspondence, the understanding of the principle of connection. All things are in some way connected. There are thousands of strings between each being and object. Those who can manipulate correspondence can take one step to arrive at a different part of the world, or make one person fleeing for their life go absolutely nowhere. They could even open portals to anywhere, stepping into them or unleashing whatever they wish. They are the ones who stare at you from across the road, only to disappear as someone walked by. The next is entropy. This is the ideas of fate, fortune, and decay. They often appear as quite contradictory, as they both embody the horrible death that awaits us all, yet they see the joy that this brings. For if we had no death, there would be no change, no fate, no fortune. A moment of pure beauty and joy only has value because one day it will end. Those who understand entropy know this more than any other. Yet, they still fiddle around with things like fate. They can manipulate change, boost or destroy luck entirely, or degrade and age substances with but a touch. Next is forces, the manipulation of the elements. Before the periodic table was a thing made a reality by the consensus, the elements were simply known as earth, air, fire, and water. Of course, understanding of the elements is more than just moving rocks and causing firestorms, but this also grants them control over the more invisible forces of our world that only the modern era has thought of, like gravity, momentum, light and darkness, and even the very atoms. They control the forces of our world, hence the name. This is probably the most obviously destructive force. After all, this is the one that lets you shoot bolts of lightning from your fingertips. Next is life, the understanding of the living form. This one has the potential to be one of the most foul, the mastery over the organic world that would make a Tzimisce blush. Beneath our skin, we're all pulp and bones and vile fluids. The mage who understands life accepts our frailties and learns how to heal them, exploit them, and twist them into interesting shapes. They need the utmost of compassion, but also the ruthlessness that is passion to domineer it. But they can heal wounds, cure sickness, rend limbs, turn people into toads, grow trees with a glance, and turn enemies into writhing protoplasm. Moving on, next is matter, the mastery of inert substances. Whereas forces deal with ethereal elements, matter deals with things you can hold in your hand that don't have a pulse, or at least they don't anymore. They can turn materials into others, long dead wood into stone, or even metal, turn bullets fired at them into harmless dust, or enchant and empower objects with other properties, although that last one might require knowledge from other spheres. Matter has the potential to be quite terrifying if used with creative hands. Next is mind, the exploration of consciousness. When thoughts and beliefs are a reality-warping power, imagine what truly understanding, reading, and shaping the minds that form them could get you. Masters of these magics are able to manipulate the mind like it is but a toy. They can affect your thoughts, feelings, impressions, memories, and your very identity. Although the ability can't really change things on a whim, it does take a long time to fully master this effect, but some have done it. And it is with one of them that I need your help with— I'm sorry, my ward, I Drifted off for a second there, where was I? Ah yes, the next sphere. This one I find a little confusing. Despite the fact I've had it explained to me several times, I still don't truly understand it. Prime. The exploration of quintessential energies. It is the ebb and flow of all energy, the ability to sense and empower or drain them of their magical essence. It aids them in resisting paradox, and I have been told that almost all know the basics of this field, yet none master it. And all find it unthinkably important. Perhaps it is something only a mage can fully understand. It seems too foreign of a concept to me. Moving on. Spirit. The accord with spiritual essence and emanations. To put it bluntly, this is the understanding of the soul, the ability to astral project, that sort of thing. Spirits and the dead would be related to this, and whatever aspect of a person transcends their physical body would be encompassed within this sphere. Although to fully get into this territory, I would have to start talking about ghosts, and, well, I really don't have the time or the want to get into them tonight. Lastly, the final sphere, time. The perception of chronological flow. This one is actually as simple as it seems. Time is, at the end of the night, the most powerful force of our world, despite the fact it is, technically speaking, man-made. We are all subject to it and follow its whims. I find it quite humorous that man, a being that thinks itself to be the apex predator, enslaved itself to a concept of its own creation. Despite the fact it is a concept we can all grasp, true understanding of time, at least on a magical level, is near impossible, and many mages are driven mad trying to fully understand and grasp time. But those who do become mighty indeed, manipulating time in ways both mundane and absurd. And to be entirely fair, you have to be a little mad to be a mage in the first place. There is talk, or rather argument, of the existence of a 10th sphere, yet I have never heard a single mage even name what it would be, so I'm just going to call bollocks to it now. The spheres, as I have just described them, mostly fit in line with what one faction of mages believe them to be. Others disagree on exact details, but the core is there for the most part. But before I get into the factions, I need to quickly explain a little bit of their history, to help you fully grasp the current mages of our world. You see, the reason there are currently different groups of mages is because of the Ascension War. Basically, the fight over who gets to govern and control the consensus, the fight over what the mortals believe. How long this has actually been going on for is actually quite hard to say. Mages can alter the past without even knowing it. It could have started at the dawn of man, or last Thursday, or both, or somehow neither. It's mages, you get used to this sort of thing. Just know that when I was around as a mortal man, there were close to none of them. What I do know is that one event happened that caused enormous paradox. None can truly agree on what it was, but I have heard some outlandish claims, such as it was the, and I'm not joking, sinking of Atlantis. Although many claim it was some other ridiculous things. Perhaps it was just the growing number of mages along with population, since they used to be quite a lot more rare. But some disaster caused what was a collection of small groups of mages to reevaluate and form full-on allegiances akin to the Convention of Thorns. In the end, two camps were made. Two different mindsets on how magic should work and how the consensus should be formed. They were mysticism and science. And yes, before you ask, science is a lie. It is a form of magic. Physics, chemistry, biology, all of it is in actuality just magical forces that one faction of mages has enforced as the truth. And mortals believe it, so it is. This enforcement of magic as a science was led by the group known today as the Technocratic Union, or the Technocracy for short. They are winning by a long shot, as you can see, but those who seek out more ancient and mystical forms of magic were the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions, or just the Traditions for short. There are other factions, but I will only brush upon them in a moment. Just know that while the technocracy was promoting wise men and prominent figures to, in essence, help shape how the world will work, the traditions were, at least according to themselves, creating religion and myths. doing all they could to keep the idea of magic and wonder alive within the minds of the common man, to make them think that mystics and miracles were still possible. And from knowing what you do of the modern era, it's quite clear who's winning. With that little bit of history out the way, I should move on to what the actual factions and groups within them are like, what the mages of today are truly doing. Keeping in mind this will be but a quick overview, because there are quite a lot of them, akin to what I did with the Lupine tribes. But I'd like to start with the traditions, simply because I find them funny and hate dealing with the technocracy. So, the Council of Nine Mystic Traditions. They are, as the name would suggest, a council of groups that have formed with the combined principle of keeping magic, well, magical. They can take on all sorts of shapes, from wizards with pointy hats and old stone castles, alongside new age hippies speaking of lovely rocks and aligning their chakras, and religious shamans taking up old practices forgotten to most of the world. This group can be as high fantasy as it gets at times, complete with full-on wizards fighting duels to maintain their honor, but also just as mundane as a group of college friends manipulating reality in order to get their pizza faster. It really does depend on the group. They are more of an allegiance of convenience than actually committed to one another's causes. You can't really find any mages within the traditions that agree on, well, anything, but they can put aside their differences for their common goal. But you see, this is a council of 9, and as the name would suggest, they have 9 members of the council, each one specializing in different spheres of magic, who view themselves as the master of their own one. Although almost every mage does tend to practice at least 2 or 3 of them, it is indeed possible for one member of their order to not practice the main one associated with them, although that is quite rare. I will still state what there should be, of course, but keep that in mind. Speaking of mind, let us start with those who are supposed to be the masters of it, the Akashic Brotherhood, or just the Akashayana for short. They are steeped in Asian mysticism, stirring primarily from Buddhist practices, I believe. They look inwards and meditate to perfect their mind, but also known to use their fists in various forms of martial arts, to do, well, all sorts of nonsense I'm sure you can discern. They have a sort of code, or practice, that they refer to as Do. It is everything from a martial art to a correct ceremony for making tea. It focuses a person's essence, form, and intentions, a tool or discipline in order to help one find enlightenment through this dedication. And I would say, out of all of the traditions, they are the far more likely to focus on their ascension. While they all seek it, but the Akashayana will bring it up in every single conversation. Moving on to the Masters of Prime, the Celestial Chorus. Remember before when I said that they earnestly believe that they invented religion? Well, that was a bit misleading of me, for they believe that all life and magic sprung forth from one being that they simply know as the One, or the Prime, or something like that, while every religion in the world was some way shaped by their hands. The idea and aspect that a single divine being is out there is unquestionable to a mage. All faiths are true and wrong in this aspect, and those who feel this religious power, those who feel the spirit of a greater being or beings, and wish to use it in their magics, tend to align with the choristers. Of course, singing is a part of them manifesting this magic, although it is by no means a requirement. I should also note, however, that despite what you may think, this has nothing to do with true faith. The ability of mortals to use their magical power is actually part of sorcerer's magics. Again, I will discuss that another night. Let us move on to the Masters of Time, the Cult of Ecstasy. As the name would imply, they spend most of their time in the pursuit of hedonistic wants, from both the simple pleasures to the deepest of pains. Do not mistake them for weak, however. Far from it, they are a group that has realized that reality itself can be altered, and decided to strive for whatever they want in the moment. For, after all, this moment is the only thing you can be certain is real. They at times struggle with, shall I say, boundaries. It's actually quite hard to tell if their pushing of one is an intentional play to further their goals, or just a misreading of a situation on their part. But when it comes to manipulating the kine, or sleepers, they are almost unmatched by any other tradition. After all, drugs, drinks, and sex are some of the oldest wants humans have. and I will always remember a quote one of these mages told me when I first met them. "Life is a gift, but most poor bastards will never get past the wrapping paper." Moving on to the Masters of Spirit, the Dream Speakers. Originating from shamanistic practices from Africa, they are in a few ways akin to the Lupines, for they view themselves as spirit warriors, and often tradition spending the most time dealing with that aspect of the world, visiting others more than any other. However, unlike the dogs, they have actually adapted well to the modern era, surprisingly enough. In fact, some of them hold the belief that due to its power and influence, the internet itself has a sort of soul, and so don't disregard it, but embrace it. If there is a group trying to empower those of a specific background to rediscover their people's historical, spiritual practices, it is quite often the Dream Speakers running a social media account that somehow slipped by the technocracy's file. They are also quite skilled healers in both a magical but primarily a physical way, with a surprising number of them being highly skilled medicine men, with most of them being on par to, if not greater than doctors. Next is the Masters of Entropy, the Euthanatos, a group that firmly believes in a cycle of life where all parts are not just needed, but in a way a beautiful genesis. Death is not the end, but simply part of a larger cycle. Life picks up where death leaves off, and death finishes what life begins, bringing it back around again and again. Many of them seek this sort of balance between the world. If it is filled with war and disease, they will do all they can to stop it. But if there is none, and too many prosper, they will cause it, and make disasters, infighting, and madness commonplace. They are where the mage idea of reincarnation comes from. They know it to be true, in fact, and are probably the main reason the traditions are so hell-bent on believing they will all do so at least once before their ascension. This great cycle is all that matters. The wheel must spin, and if anything would interrupt it, it will be destroyed without mercy. But also with no malice. They are merely correcting a wrong. Their opinions do not matter. Let us move on to those of the Seat of Forces, and probably the poster children and default leaders of the traditions, the Order of Hermes. With pride and gusto, these are your stereotypical wizards, with every single conception that just came into your mind when you heard that. They have, in their words, defined European history, with a member of their order being influential in almost every single major event, and I can confirm that that is in many ways true, for I've had to deal with a member of their order. Merlin. Yes, the Merlin, the one who is aiding King Arthurus. More on him later. The Order of Hermes itself is comprised of various sub-factions, which they call houses. This is exactly how different groups of Tremere act, and there's a good reason for this. Since before they found a way to embrace themselves, the Tremere were a house within the Order of Hermes. And while each house is quite a bit different, that should tell you all you need to know about their order. Next is the Masters on the Seat of Matter, the Sons of Ether, the perfect example of how all science is made of nonsense that anyone can change on the spot. Because unlike most of the traditions, they are one of the groups that have a sense of scientific achievement. However, this group happens to believe that we peaked in our understanding of science with steam power and Tesla technology, and are refusing to carry on with the times. They feel as if they have leapt from the pages of a Pulp Fiction or Victorian sci-fi novella, complete with death rays, robotic servants built of brass, and empowered clockwork futuristic space or aquatic vehicles. They're quite eccentric and downright silly at times, but I actually find them quite endearing for this reason. When they firmly believe something works the way it is, there is nothing you can do or say to change their mind. If they didn't have an ego that would rival a La Sombra, I'd quite happily spend more time with one, although their steampunk fascination, as I've heard it's been called, is a bit much for me. Moving on to the Masters of Life, the Verbena, famed for healing, divination, and purgation. They are a good example of an old wise woman who lives in the woods and might in fact be a witch. Many of them are known for their extensive gardens and groves, where they seek to grow their own world tree, as they call it. Many of their beliefs align with what a modern man doing selective research would think paganism is like, and so they align more closely with that of the practices of Wicca. They even form covens of witches in order to heal the land and help in small rural areas, despising the cities, and for that I can relate. They also tend to do a lot more family focus, shall I say, with them being one of the few traditions that not only have children awaken like themselves, but also keep their family involved with their covens and practices. And the last tradition, and their polar opposite, the Masters of Correspondence, the Virtual Adepts. If you've ever heard a group talk about how the Matrix is not only real, but secretly ruling our lives, while this group not only fully believes in it all, but will actually take you into it and show you. They are techno-mages, so to speak, and spend more time fighting their rivals in the technocratic union. They hold a belief that ascension is to be beyond human, and many of them will cybernetically enhance their own bodies and enter digital spaces, spending more time within a world of computers than actually dealing with their own problems. By far the youngest of their order, and always looking to prove themselves to the foolish old above them as they see it. But that is about all I have to say on the Council of Nine mystic traditions. For now, you ought to know about the other side of that same coin. The Technocratic Union and their various sub-factions, a group that defines itself by the idea of order and reason, and actually work alongside us at the Camarilla when they need to. However, we are not allies, and for most of the time, you absolutely have to watch them. For you to understand how they are, however, I shall repeat a speech I heard from a high-ranking technocrat. The future is now, and all shall fall in line. For it is the technocracy that are to bring the world into order and make them see reason. The blind masses know not their power, and so must be guided in order to do what is best for all. We cannot have mages distorting reality around, causing untold destruction for the sake of little more than their pride and vanity. It is clear that the lesser evil is to guide reality, shepherd the consensus, make the rules of the world consistent so that the future can be bright. That speech was given to me at a board meeting between powerful supernatural figures where the dogs at Pentex were lapping it up. Luckily, there was a Camarilla Zamitzi and a Fae present who saw through that bullshit. Yet we all nodded and agreed to keep it civil. Despite the arrogance of their nature, their logic is at least consistent. And they did, technically, invent science, so I suppose you have them to thank for it. Out of all of us groups that secretly rule the world from the shadows, I must admit through gritted teeth, they are probably the most powerful and influential. But in order to understand why, I should get into their different branches, which they call conventions. The first of which I wish to speak of is called Iteration X. They are a group of artificers and arms dealers, to put them bluntly, seeking to perfect humanity's flaws with cybernetics and training most of their members to be militaristic, with almost every private military company having Iteration X as their greatest patron, even if they don't know it. Their goal is to make hypertech, as they call it, and often have enormous forge facilities off-world, as in facilities built on other planets, hoping that this will help them achieve mechanist perfection, where all shall be ultra-powerful cyborgs or some rubbish like this. But to be fair to them, their soldiers are in fact stronger, faster, and better than mortals. It's just a shame for them that my ghouls are better still and have human personalities at the end of the night. But I suppose that matters to them very little now, doesn't it? Let us move on to those who are in charge of the mortals, whose job it is to rule the world for the betterment of all. The New World Order. Yes, I'm being serious. The New World Order is real. The Men in Black using magic in order to shape reality. If you saw something you should not have, a man in a very nice black suit will tell you to simply look into this white box and all of your problems will go away. Only for you to awaken in your bed with no memory of the supernatural. Working covertly from the shadows, they are quite effective as secret police, I might add. After all, it is far better for the masses to believe in a truth given to them rather than the horror that is reality. I would work quite fine with them actually, but they are not so willing to, and in fact, they are starting to step on the Camarilla's boots more and more, and that I cannot abide by. We have been here far longer, and have perfected an art they have just discovered. They would heed us if they knew what was good for them. If we are to come to blows with the technocracy, it will be with the New World Order. Moving on. The progenitors, the masters of biology seeking to fully govern the power of physical organisms. Like Iteration X, they focus on the next step of humanity. However, unlike them, the progenitors think this can be achieved through a sort of controlled and forced evolution, vivisected by their hands. After all, the difference between Neanderthals and humans was minuscule, and yet there are no Neanderthals today, now are there? So one small push can be all that is needed for grand changes in power. They also know the most about other supernatural creatures. They have entire facilities and foundations set up to contain and study them, with even some young unfortunate kindred being within their grasp. After all, when you need to be the master of biology, looking at the exceptions will help you tremendously. They are your classical doctors and scientists in white lab coats taking notes, while a creature within a glass box is screaming for its life. Moving on to the next group, the Syndicate. They have a creed. Power is everything, and money is the truest form of power. Whoever makes the gold makes the rules. They are the ones pulling at the strings of the whole of the technocratic union, and are the very definition of capitalism. They know a good deal about ruling, and when it comes to these skills, they are on par to the Ventru. And you know, when I say that, I do not mean it lightly. In fact, they often take a considerable number of our potential recruits. After all, the pool of people sitting at the very top of financial power that truly earned it themselves is not exactly large. Both us and them have to keep a vigil eye on them. Fortunately for us, it's quite an ordeal to awaken one as a mage, where all we need is a well-placed kiss upon the neck. I want to hate them, but in truth, they are far too competent for me to bring myself to. They are very good at trade and power. Let us speak of the last convention, the Void Engineers, the explorers of the horror that is space. Many wonder if there is life out there, and the Void Engineers know for a fact that there is life beyond the stars, and it is made of horrors beyond our imagination. Lovecraftian monstrosities that pull out, ravage, and destroy the very concept that is your soul, purely because they could. Purely because they had that power over you. Because it's fun. However, humanity's future is among the stars. If we do not destroy ourselves, we will take the universe. And so it must be cleared out. Filled with a wanderlust, the Void Engineers take to the stars and fight monsters, all while most sleep ignorantly of the vast evil that seeks to do horrors none can imagine. They think that the earth is dying and gone, and that the stars hold our salvation, and I, for one, understand their logic. This planet at times can be absolutely horrible, but the potential of humans is quite impressive. Let us hope we can pull it off. That is the two major factions of mages spoken of, and while there are quite a few other groups and small independents I could speak of, there's only really two more I need to for you to fully understand the mages. One I shall go over only shortly, are the Marauders. These are mages who have, in some form or manner, broken, and have been driven mad. Seemingly immune to the forces of paradox, at least as most know it, they are seen as a threat by all, mostly to themselves, but also to reality itself. Magic is inherently a maddening concept after all. A mage's goal is to understand a concept that is without rules, so how could one fully comprehend such a thing? Well, most can't, and often show clear marks that their nature is unnatural. Magic is breaking of reality itself, and so the broken and the mad are its true masters, despite what others will tell you. If you see a mage with 6 arms and no eyes that can destroy entire fabrics of reality on a whim by accident, kill them on sight. They are just a mortal man at the end of the night. But the last I wish to speak of are the worst of them, for they have looked upon the concept of evil, the power of pain and torture, and loved it. The fallen slaves of darkness, the Nefandi. They seek not to ascend to a higher state, but instead descend into darkness, dragging all they can with them, the complete destruction of all that brings, well, anything to be in a state of pure horrid darkness, the destruction of reality itself, an endless void where nothing happens and nothing changes. They serve no masters, not in truth, and while they summon demons and horrors from space, it is only to help their own horrid goals. They make bedfellows of the Barli, for all agree that none of them should exist and are killed on sight. Despite this, they infiltrate all that they can and do any horrid evil they want. To truly become a Nefandi, they destroy an aspect of their own avatar, so, as they believe it, if they are reborn, they will always be another Nefandi, regardless of their wants. They wish to do so with as many avatars as they can, with some claiming they can force it onto others, ensuring their eventual victory. But like the Barli, it matters not how powerful you are when you have united enemies against you. Any threat that large cannot last, and the mages make it very clear they are not here to stay when they show up. And from what I've heard about them and their nature, I'm quite grateful, as I'm sure they are when we deal with the Barli. Right, well that's almost all I shall speak of the mages, yet I want to quickly go over what they think of us before my tale. You see, mages, like the lupines, quite fear us, as they should, for our blood is addicted, not just to them, but their very avatar itself. The wellspring of their power that is connected to them can become addicted to the vitae, just as the mages, and if an avatar develops one, it will follow them forever. There is nothing they can do to permanently end this addiction. It will forever be an itch that they will want to scratch. For this reason, they despise the idea of being ghouled, for if they do, they will slowly lose their magic, for the avatar will care for nothing else. How long this takes depends on how addicted the avatar is, and the will of the mage, but eventually it will fade. However, if they are embraced, they will just lose all of their magic as if they were but a man before, but the avatar will be completely unaffected, for it was just a brief moment. They call us night folk, by the way, and we too should fear them because of their complete uncertainty. See, most kindred should fear the likes of other supernatural beings. For a funny analogy, if a mortal was just a normal man, a kindred would be a man with a weapon, and a lupine would be a large wolf. Most kindred will have a knife, and so probably lose the fight with the lupine. I, comparatively, will have a gun, so the wolf is not much of a threat to me. But a mage is a man with a mystery box. Within that box could be anything. It could simply be a stick or a coughing baby, but it could also be the full and concentrated power of the sun directly within their hand. Fighting a mage would be akin to opening Schrodinger's box, except it's not the cat's life that's being gambled on, but your own. And I shall not take that gamble unless it is needed, even if I have a gun. Lastly, let me speak of the first mage I met, the legendary Merlin. And if I'm being honest with you, I wish I didn't. He, despite being on the side of my enemy, King Arthur, was surprisingly cordial with myself, especially after I won the war. He swapped sides almost immediately. He aided me in rebuilding the land greater than it was before, only to instrument its destruction again, then help rebuild it again. He had this annoying habit of altering the memory of the people around me at the time, and sometimes even I couldn't keep up with what he changed. And no doubt, he tried to alter my memory too, and in some ways probably succeeded. He tricked me more times than he aided me. He was a scoundrel and a charlatan who cared more for jokes and pranks than actually helping me run a nation. In fact, he is why I developed a hatred for practical jokes. For one time, he enchanted my clothes to forever smell of long-dead fish. To top it all off, he was a deviant. I had many complaints from the ladies of the court about his unwanted advances. I have no idea if he treated Arthur this badly. Perhaps this was his way of showing me how bitter he was over the ordeal, but I wouldn't be shocked if this was just in his nature. To make things more bizarre, he just vanished one day. My men claim he stole a horse and just rode it off into the sea. I never heard from him again. It was only 200 years later, when I truly learned of what mages were, that rumours of his ascension reached my ears. And if he, out of all other mages, found a way to ascend, I have no words. Merlin is one of the few accursed entities of this world who has made me speechless, even after his long disappearance. Yet despite all of his flaws and faults, a part of me misses him. Though he was a prick, he was quite funny. Mages are mad. They defy all senses of logic and order. Despite the fact that many of them crave such forces, their very existence defies them. You can never predict a mage, and you sure as hell can never let your guard down among them. Yet their power is undeniable, and if you can become as close as allies our kinds can be with one, you would do well to do so. Their auras are infectious. They make you feel as if wonders and magics are real, and then they turn you into a giraffe or something. The humour depends on whether they did it on purpose or not. Even they don't know. Right, now I really must be off my ward. I have a meeting with Lady Delilah. You know her. She's the Tremere who's older than me, despite the fact I'm older than her entire clan. She was also a Setite once, and recently died in a raid from the Second Inquisition. Wait, how can any of that be— Ah! Sorry, my ward, I had a lapse in my thought for a moment. I really must be off. I'm sure whatever you have to say is important, so perhaps you should look into that yourself. But do have a good night now, and stay safe. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good night.